I am so thrilled and actually really jealous you got to watch this on a big screen. Please join me in welcoming some of the remarkable artists who brought the Old West back to life. I want to start with an Emmy-winning actor you've seen deliver standout performances and roles as varied as The Squid and the Whale, Steve Jobs, of course Dumb and Dumber. You don't get a bigger range than that. Please welcome Jeff Daniels. Also, we have the wildly versatile actress who plays Alice. I always forget she's British because she is so good in this. She is, of course, a 3-time Emmy nominee. Please welcome Michelle Dockery. The creator of Godless, he also directed all 7 episodes. Please welcome Scott Frank. One of the show's executive producers. He's having a great year in TV. He's also a producer on Mosaic. Please welcome Casey Silver. And last but definitely not least, we have the Emmy Award-winning actress who plays Mary Agnes on the show. Please welcome Merritt Wever. Thank you guys so much for being here. Congratulations on it, and thank you, honestly, on a fantastic show. It is so much fun to watch. I want to start at the beginning because, Scott, I believe you originally wrote this as a screenplay, and you've kind of lived with the story for, is it 15 years?
Something like that. I think I started thinking about it around 2002, so yeah.
Wow. And, how did it end up as a, should I say TV series? I know that this is a streaming platform, but I do think of this in many ways as like an 8-hour movie.
Yeah, I believe we call it a limited series. Is that correct? Yes. The movie business didn't want any more westerns. It was just a very hard time to get a western made, and they don't do well overseas, I was told, and it was expensive and all sorts of reasons for the kind of uphill climb way back then. And then the world changed. Then television happened first, and great series and all the adult dramas moved from the movie theater to the living room. And then the second thing that happened was Netflix. And this was something they were actively looking for, was a western.
I'm curious because when you were writing this, and did you know it was going to be like basically 8 hours, and were you thinking, if only there was some sort of platform where people could stream a whole show at one time before it even existed?
The notion that I would write a 7.5-hour show for the company that used to mail me my Dumb and Dumber DVD it was absurd. Yeah, I had no idea that this would be it, and it was always going to be a big, long movie. And then we expanded it right before we started shooting, and we thought it would be 6 episodes, and there was just so much goodness that we added an episode.
And Casey, I'm curious, how did you come to be involved in this project, and what attracted you to it?
Well, Scott and I are old pals and have known each other for over 30 years, and Scott said to me...
Since I was 2.
Scott said to me about 15 years ago that he was interested in doing a Western, and asked if I'd like to work with him on it. And so the voyage began.
Did he have anything?
He had nothing.
Yeah,
he did it all.
He just said a Western, and I'm curious where this idea about this town of widows came up. It's so fascinating.
That came from Mimi Munson, my researcher, and we were, as Casey said, I had no idea whatsoever. I just knew I wanted to write a Western. And writers always talk about, I scribbled this idea on a napkin and turned it in. I didn't even have a napkin. I had nothing. So I would meet with Mimi, who's here hiding somewhere, I think. I would meet with Mimi once every couple of weeks, and we would talk about, I was working on other things, and we would talk about what it might be. And she said to me one week, I think you should look into mining. And I you know, I love McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and I thought that's a terrific Western to think about. And then a couple weeks later, she said, you know, there are these towns where all the men die in an afternoon. I found at least 2 or 3 of these places where there's an accident, and in a single afternoon, they become these kind of matriarchies. And when she said it very casually, and I thought, well, that's it. That's a great place to set a traditionally kind of male story.
And for the actors, how did the script find its way to you, and what attracted you to these roles?
We got wind of it, Scott sent it, something, and I had done a movie with Scott called The Lookout way back when, which was a great experience for me, and so the fact that he wanted me to do something that I had never done before with him was an instant yes.
The idea that there's something you haven't done is so strange to me, because I feel like you've played every genre. Had you never done a Western?
I've tried. I've done, yes, yeah. It's what interests me, you know, is going from Dumb and Dumber to Frank Griffin, you know, to Newsroom or whatever. It's just, I love the risk. I love the risk.
I mean, was that part of the appeal? I've seen you play very complicated characters. I would even say villains in some cases. I'm thinking of Squid and the Whale. But something like this is, I mean, that's why they have me seated so far away. I'm scared.
Half of it was the beard.
Very scary beard.
He wanted a 1/4 inch. He wanted Hank Fonda in Once Upon a Time in the West or whatever that was. That's what he wanted, and I showed up with, you know, that, and
really?
And he said okay. Yeah.
How long did it take to grow that?
3 months.
Did you have a celebration when you shaved it off? I'm always.
No, there was no celebration. It just I was tending to my broken wrist that I broke on the second to last day of shooting, riding one of those horses.
I actually do want to come back to that, because I think I've heard this story. But
well, good.
But Michelle, for you, I mean, I think you're kind of cast against type here as well. I mean,
I mean, it's a Western. For me, it's not something that I ever imagined that I would have the opportunity to do. You know, it's a sandbox you don't get to play in all that often. So it was a script that I was so drawn to, and I auditioned for the role. You know, put myself on tape. I was filming in North Carolina at the time, and found this studio where you could go and, you know, someone helps you to put yourself on tape, because it's actually quite a tricky thing to, you know, to find someone to read with and put your camera on a pile of books to film the audition, you know. And I was so relieved that I found this place, and they had all these props. They had like toy rifles, and I was like, that's fantastic. That's exactly what I need for this one.
I want to see this audition tape.
It's really rather good.
But I just put it out there. You know, it's what you do. You throw it out there, and Scott and the gang liked it, and then that was it. And it was just such an amazing thing to be part of. I was just thrilled to be part of it.
To be honest, I'm a little surprised to hear you auditioned, because you are so accomplished, but at the same time, we've seen you as Lady Mary for so many years. Yeah.
You still have to, you know, some roles need convincing, and I think because of Mary, and Scott, you know, will agree, you know, it's a character that is so set in people's minds that I played, and I knew that it would have to take some convincing after Downton, you know, and I've been lucky enough to play 2 roles, you know, Alice and Letty in Good Behaviour, who are so far removed from Mary. But I did enjoy getting back into period costume, I have to say. My first costume fitting with Betsy was just brilliant. But I was pleased I didn't have to wear a corset.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, some of the other girls had to. Me and Merritt didn't have to. So.
And Merritt, talking about sort of casting against type, like the sweet nurse on Nurse Jackie. Yeah. Who gave probably my favorite Emmy speech ever. to get up here and be, you know, such a different character. I mean, was that part of the appeal, and did you ever worry that you could pull it off?
Yeah, I always worried about pulling it off. I'm still not sure how this part came my way. I think a lot of it probably has to do with the casting director, Ellen Lewis, who I don't know what made her think of me, but I've sent her many cards, you know.
And for all of you, was there any special research you had to undertake to get into this time period? I hear you guys actually built this town in Santa Fe. I mean, that had to be a huge help.
Yeah, we built the town, but mostly it was just getting everybody. Well, first I had to back up and say two things. One, going back to both Merritt and Michelle about you were surprised she had to audition. The surprising thing for me is that she was typecast as Lady Mary to a degree, because she is closer to both Letty and Alice than she is Mary. We all know that, and everybody up here certainly knows that. But that's the big secret. And Merritt, I had never seen Nurse Jackie, so I had only seen the acceptance speech, which goes like this: thank you very much, I have to go now. You should all YouTube. And I saw photographs, and then I remembered that a friend of mine had directed her and Michael Clayton. And I remember asking him when I saw the movie about that girl, and him telling me that she was maybe one of the best actors he'd ever worked with. So when Ellen had brought up the name and when we talked about it, so there is these weird things that happen. And Jeff, I knew I wanted, the Henry Fonda thing was less about facial hair than somebody who's known to be a good guy playing a bad guy. And sometimes they can really do it, especially if, like Jeff, they're really not such a nice guy down deep. And because Jeff has such a wide range of roles he's played, what I've done is take away body parts each time now. I took away his eyes in The Lookout and his arm in Godless, and wait till you see our next work. What was the question?
Sort of the preparation.
Oh, preparation. They all had to go to Cowboy camp.
That sounds fun.
They can talk more about that, but everybody had to learn how to use a gun and ride a horse, and some had to spend more time than others, and some did better at it than others.
Okay, Cowboy camp sounds really fun, but I'm guessing maybe it wasn't always fun.
I did, yeah, it was fun. I mean, I'd ridden horses before on other jobs like Downton, but not in the same way. I mean, Western is quite different, and you hold the reins with just your left hand. And on my first lesson, I was like, well, why'd you do that then? You know, why can't I use both hands? And he said, well, you need the other one to pull out your gun to shoot if you need to. I was like, oh my God, this is very different from British riding. But it was, and shooting was just, I mean, I was terrified actually the first time I picked up that gun, and the adrenaline and the fear, you know, it was mad, but it was a lot of fun. You know, I've never played a part like that before where I've had to have some sort of training, you know, physical training before. It was a lot of fun.
Jeff, had you been on a horse before? I feel like...
Not like that. I had to go, I was on a horse in Michigan where I live with a guy for almost 2 months. And so, because I read all the scripts ahead of time and going, oh, I'm galloping across rivers. Okay, I got it in front of 100 guys behind me, and I'm at the point, and I gotta look like John Wayne. So we've got to get to work. So I did, and I'm glad I did, because it's an 800-pound infant. I mean, those things, when they decide they are done with you, they are done with you. And they won't do that thing that go 10 feet and hit the mark. They won't do it. And then it's when you're in that, the big one was when you're in that big race, when you're 30 across, they all, and the wranglers tell you this, they all think it's the Kentucky Derby. The horses do, and they want to win. They want to finish first. So you haven't felt that gear yet. And you're about to. And so that's kind of what it was like every day. And it really was about surviving, you know, not getting hurt.
Or killed. And
Or
Jeff
killed.
also had to ride with one hand literally behind his back or in front of his back, depending on where the camera was. So to balance without it being able to use both hands was tricky. Interestingly enough, the time he fell, he had both hands, all 3 times, but that's beside the point.
So can we talk about this? This was on the second to last day of shooting. You had made it that far?
Yeah, we were doing the bareback scene, and I get on the horse, and I lay him down, I do some great speeches, and then they were great speeches. And then I get on that fucking horse, and I get on and I'm up, and we spin, and now we're in New Mexico shooting. The horse sees Colorado. He's going. He's like, and I'm going. Second to last day of shooting. I'm out of here. I've already fallen off him twice in October. I just jump off, land, break my wrist.
Oh, gosh. And
Morphine. I had morphine. That was fun. I enjoyed the morphine. I highly recommend
It was fun for Jeff.
It was fun for Jeff, because then the next morning with morphine and a broken wrist, I showed up to shoot the last day, because I'm old school, and, you know, we got through it. We got through it.
oh, I want to guess which scene you were on morphine for.
The morphine, by the time I got to the set, the morphine had worn off. So it was like a steak knife stuck in the back here. But it was where Jack and I are getting hung, and then we get talked out of it.
And he's laughing, and he's in complete. If you saw him after we said cut, he's like this. You know, he's walking out to the set like this.
Wow.
And then as soon as we said action, we would do a few in a row, and then he would limp back home.
Stay on the horse. Whatever you do, stay on the horse.
Casey and Merritt, I'm actually really curious. What ended up being the biggest challenge for you while making this? I keep referring to it as a movie. While making this limited series.
Well, the challenge really was getting the financing. Our friends at Netflix coming through, and then it was a mad race because we had a feature screenplay, as Scott said, that was a really terrific screenplay, and Netflix suggested that we could turn it into 6 episodes. They gave us a start date. We started building the town you earlier referred to, and we still had half the script for Scott to write. So it was just sort of getting it all put together.
How much time did you have?
To write the script?
Yeah.
3 months.
And we were casting, and people sitting on the stage. It was all getting assembled, and the Netflixers were pretty extraordinary in their ability to trust, as we're literally, sprinting in front of the train. It's catching up, and we're trying to hit the start date. And then the other part of it is to try and keep everybody safe, which, with the exception of Mr. Daniels, we did a pretty good job.
Almost made it.
90% is still an A.
And Merritt, I mean, you actually look so natural riding a horse. You really do.
Well, I only ride a horse in one scene.
But you look natural.
I don't mean to
in that.
brag, but I mean, everyone's talking about all their hard work, and one day, possibly day one, but one day.
Well, in the episode they just saw, you come in to talk to Alice.
That was her first day of shooting.
Oh yeah.
You shot the ending first?
Yeah, well, that was one of the challenges for me, shooting for so long, out of order, and it's always like that. But I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Maybe I come from episodic television where it's out of order, but it's only 5 days at a time. Yeah, and then the other challenge would be playing somebody so strong and tough. At a time in my life when I did not feel strong and tough, and that felt almost physically painful. I don't know.
Did it help though in some way being Mary Alice?
Didn't help a bit. It just hurt. It hurt my feelings. It hurt. It was painful.
Jeff is laughing at your pain. It's
Kept it so well hidden.
Oh,
I didn't anything. Because she's such an empowering character. I mean, I'm empowered by her. I'm sorry that playing her didn't have the...
No, yeah, I'm not asking for pity. Well, I'm glad that it feels that way, but yeah, I tried to find ways that she maybe wasn't so tough, so I didn't feel like, you know, I tried to find more cracks in her.
Yeah, well, that's what makes her so fascinating too, honestly. Yeah. Jeff, I'm really curious about the relationship Frank has with Roy Good, played by Jack O'Connell, obviously. Who's I would love to talk about every one of these cast members because they're so amazing. You know, Frank, I think it's safe to say Frank is not a good guy, but he has these paternal feelings towards Roy. Yeah, and I mean, is that a fun range to play, or is it, you can't, I know actors always say they can't look at their characters they're playing as a villain, but do you believe that, or are you kind of like, this guy might...
I didn't look at him as either one, heroic or villainous. He was a guy who, he was a whole bunch of contradictions. He's quoted the Bible. He made up things that he thought were in the Bible. He had no problem riding a horse into a church and singing a hymn with the people from the podium. That was his, once you figured out that was his normal, and that wasn't too crazy, then you, oh, okay, all right. And then you add in the thing with Jack and with Roy, the father-son thing, about how taking a child like he did with Roy, was a stronger bond than actually having born a child, you know, in Frank's head, because that's what happened to him. And that's where the writing comes in, because the writing was so rich and deep. There was such a history there that when Frank's sitting there talking at the campfire with the kids, and he's got the little Swedish kid on his lap, and he's telling this story about, that's sick. That's just sick. But it's great. It's just so fertile. And the writing is so, that's what chases me to things like Godless and Netflix, is the writing. It's where the writers are, you know.
I'm curious, and maybe you don't want to answer this, but I have to at least ask, has Frank really seen his death, or is that bluster?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that, because I don't know which answer is better, to be honest with you.
Well, give us both.
I don't have a version of his death in my head, which probably is the answer to your question.
Did you?
Yeah, I think to make sense of it, yeah, he had it, and that wasn't it.
Well, he saw wrong, as we all know.
I think that was the choice.
I do want to take some questions from the audience. If you have one, we have an audience mic. I see one down there and one right over here. Whoever you can get to first.
Hello?
Yes, sure.
Oh, okay. My name is Pierre. I'm an agent. I'm very interested with the score of the film. I think it was beautifully done. How was it approached? How did you decide to do it this way? It's a little difficult to find what kind of music was appropriate at that time. So if you could talk about that, that would be great.
Yeah, the score is a huge part of this. And Carlos Rafael Rivera, who did the music, had done the music for my previous film. He is a Cuban-American composer who I had met many years ago and have been working with for a while, and very sensitive to storytelling in a way. It's very much thinking about, he and I would start working before I've shot anything. He would read the script and he would send me pieces of music, kind of these little videos with lines from the scene underneath it, description underneath the music. He was always thinking about the music, so much so that there are many scenes in Godless that were inspired by his music, the visuals. The scene where Michelle is attacked by the Comanche is one. The scene at the end of episode, I think it's now 6, where the flashback of the whole town walking back to the mine and you see all the men going down, that was all music he'd written ahead of time, and the long ride at the end was written also well before. And the title sequence music he wrote very early on. And so he and I start talking, and I would frequently tell him to start thinking about things, describing things to him that we're going to shoot. And we would talk a lot about instrumentation. This was always going to be primarily a guitar score. And we go back and forth, and he, unlike most composers who kind of check in and check out very quickly, because I've got him young, I can take advantage of him and keep him there longer. And it's a real collaboration, and I have to say he helps the script, he helps the visuals, he helps everything for me, and he did it, and the score is gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, sorry, over here now?
Oh, hi, will you please talk about the showdown in the town? Was that originally in your film? How did you choreograph that? Did you storyboard it? Just elaborate a little bit, because it was very epic, and I enjoyed it a lot more than some of the others. Like, I mean, it was better than Tombstone.
Shh. The shootout was always in the script, almost beat for beat, except for one section, which is the section when Martha comes down the stairs, the section we call the opera, where she comes down shooting, and that kind of long slow motion sequence was not in it. We storyboarded every inch of it. We had a stage where we taped out the floor plan of every floor. We walked through it, we organized it. You had to in order to organize how to shoot it. The hotel was built to accommodate that sequence of horses riding in and out of the hotel, steel reinforced staircases, extra wide halls, extra slightly higher ceilings. And horses can actually ride up the stairs without any problem whatsoever. They just can't ride down the stairs. So it presents a problem when you get them up. You have this like pit crew that comes in and nails these like planks off a ship with these ridges across them, and then they're led down the stairs after each run up the stairs, and then the walls on the back of the hotel, some of them flip down into ramps for them, so that if they only went up one flight, they could go up and right down again. But it was all very carefully planned, very carefully storyboarded, and then we kind of filmed it rough, each of the events with the stunt people did with a little iPhone, just filming all of it so that we could make sure things worked, the horse going out the window and the roof. And the ladies on the roof were part of that, was the regular roof of the hotel, and part of it was a roof that's about as high as this stage, because you can't really ride a horse all the way up onto the roof. It's not, and gallop it across the roof. It's just not safe. Who'd have thought? But so we built it on the ground with a blue screen around it for when he rides the horse up onto the roof and is shot off the horse.
Wow, it's amazing. I'm not sure where the mic ended up next. Does somebody have one? We have time for a couple more, I think.
Could you talk a little bit more? Great job, by the way. Congratulations on a great series. Can you talk a little bit more about running in front of the train, the 3 months to write? You know, that's a lot of writing, and how much was going on throughout the series and developing along the way, and maybe just a little bit more of that process.
You know, we didn't do what was good is I'd thought about it for so long, so it sounds glib to say, or it is glib to say 3 months, because I've been thinking about it for such a long time, and there were a lot of scenes we'd cut from the initial screenplay that I really missed, and things I wanted to explore in the new script that, again, that were just on my mind, so it just came rather quickly for whatever reason. We didn't do a lot of rewriting, you know. Here and there, we would rehearse something. I remember Merritt came to me for my favorite scene is there's a dinner in episode 2 at the mining company, and we were rehearsing it, and we did a version of it, and Merritt said to me, I think she's giving in too easy. There's something, I'm not sure why, you know, why she would give in so easily. And so I went back, and I realized she was right. I'm sure I said to her, you know, just do it as I tell you to do it. She was right, so I went back and wrote that whole speech, including we're a lot fucking stronger than you think we are, we came out, changed people. That whole speech that she gives standing up was not in the script, and I wouldn't have done that if Merritt hadn't suggested that. Michelle had this whole idea about her past and the attack and getting cut and so on, and replaying certain things and visual ideas that were never in the script that I wouldn't have done if we hadn't talked about it. And that poem at the end, I added because I found it in the whole speech that pastor reads. The Levy poem came just later as well.
I think we have time for one more question. We have one in here in front.
Hi, thanks so much. I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about specifically directing each actor and how you felt like if you needed to articulate things in a certain way differently for each person, or how...
Yeah, I think you have a lot of different types in this. Like, I assume because Michelle's British, she's classically trained.
Really?
I just assume everyone went to RADA.
I didn't actually go to RADA.
But everyone has their own style. How do you kind of work it all as a cohesive whole?
It's tricky, and two people in the same scene that have a different way of working.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this group is very easy, and if you cast right, that's 90% of the battle. But everybody has a different way of working, and some people need to have more discussion and need to understand it better in order to feel authentic. Some people want me to say as few words as possible.
Do you have anything to say?
I told him 5 words or less.
Yeah.
And I'll do anything you want, but 5 words or less.
Which reduces me to saying, just do it better.
Better than 4.
And he would say that. He would say that, and I knew what he meant.
I actually do want to ask, because I have to imagine this was a tough shoot. You're racing against a clock. This is an epic shoot out in the middle of what I have to imagine must have been miserable weather. But was it fun? Did you guys have a good time?
Amazing.
Yes. Did you ever feel bad about the way you were treating each other on screen? Did you have to buy each other drinks at the end of the night?
They were having many drinks at the end of every night.
Yeah, the ladies of LaBelle, we had some fun nights.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I don't know if you have all seen the Godless bar next door, but there is a reception afterwards. You should check it out. Have you seen it? I don't know if you've been able to. There is a bottle of Jack Daniels. That's how you know you've made it. I thought you'd be more tickled by that, but you seem that is
Take me back to remember Michelle's far too young. Merritt is too. That we had answering machines. We didn't even have pages. Remember that we had answering services. That's what it was. Do you? We had to. Any messages for Jack Daniels? Jack Daniels, the whiskey? No, that's not the first time I've heard that. That was 30 years ago, so thanks. That's a new joke for me.
Glad you bring up that trauma. It's only fair you traumatized me so much in this show.
Well,
for which I have to say thank you and congratulations. I want to thank you all for such a fantastic experience. I want to thank you guys for being a great audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you.